everyone, I'm Shaheen from The Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here with Abigail Cruz, an expert on social media in the fashion and beauty space, and currently heading social media for the Hut Group's beauty brands. Thanks so much for joining us, Abigail.
Thanks so much for having me.
So could you just start out by telling us a bit more about your background and how you got into social media, particularly into beauty and fashion?
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Sydney, Australia. So I went to university there and I studied business. I knew from the outset, though, that finance and accounting were definitely not for me. So I focused more on the management and marketing side of things, which I really enjoyed. And I loved how it really explored human behavior and what drives people to think the way they do. And yeah, that's just something I naturally really enjoyed. So coming out of that, I had my first job as an editor and community manager at this online youth media publication. It was called Pedestrian TV in Sydney. It was very similar to Vice and BuzzFeed in the way that it ran and its format. And I looked after actually the career section of the website and its social channels. And that's there that I got my kind of first taste of social media and how I started to see how useful social could really be for businesses, and how as a brand it was essentially a global, avenue to have a two-way conversation with your audience and hear what they have to say and give them the stories and information they need, and whatever feels relevant to them. So I really enjoyed that part of social, and that's really what kind of drove me to become more interested in it. And I had so much fun working in that startup environment, and being able to grow the channels organically by posting funny memes. And the company still does that to this day, which is really exciting. And it's good that we kind of paved the way for humor to kind of come through as a marketing avenue or a marketing choice, which is really great. But to be honest, I personally was always obsessed with fashion and beauty personally. So when the opportunity came for a social producer to jump on board for the publisher of Marie Claire and InStyle in Australia, I just jumped at the opportunity because I always read those magazines. I love the brands. So yeah, and that's when I became a social media producer over there. It was such a learning curve, I have to be honest, because it was a traditional print company. They were just starting to build out their digital offering. So when I came to the team, it felt that social was being a bit underutilized. It was just another kind of afterthought. People didn't really use social as a proper channel, I thought. So at that time, we were able to really build out a plan from scratch. We were able to test different assets and different ways to communicate on social. And we had to kind of be a bit reactive because the algorithm would literally change every few months or every few kind of quarters. So we had to really be on the pulse when it came to what we were posting. But yeah, we became one of the first publishers in the country to really properly commercialize social as well and sell it to advertisers, which I thought was a really exciting time. And we really focused on storytelling, which I think is a big part of social, and still kind of the heart of it to this day. So yeah, that happened. And then I always wanted to move over to client side though, and really work for a brand that I loved, or really focus on a brand, because after, working on publisher side, you have to deal with a lot of brands and a lot of needs and different kind of objectives on social. So I thought in 2018 that I'd try my luck and see what I could do in London. So I literally just kind of finished up at Marie Claire and InStyle, and just went overseas to London to see what was there. I actually did my final year of uni at London, so I fell in love with it back then, and I still really wanted to come back to it now. So I fortunately, even though I didn't have a plan, I fortunately just found a role as the global head of global social lead, at Ted Baker, and got some great exposure working at a scale with premium, within the premium fashion space, which was really great. And then I got offered this head of social role at THG, and it's a newly formed social team. So we're kind of working from scratch again, but it's exciting. And now we're pretty much here.
So for those who aren't familiar with the Hut Group or THG, can you tell us a bit more about what the company does and what brands people might be familiar with?
Yeah, so the Hut Group, it's a bit of a global digital powerhouse. It like owns some of the world's most well-known brands in the health and beauty space. Most people will know Look Fantastic and My Protein as the kind of bigger names in the company. But over the years, they've also acquired some of their own sort of brands. And that includes ESPA, Illamasqua and Perricone MD. So for the skincare fans out there, they'll know that as well. On top of it all, they also actually have two separate arms of the business. They also act as a full service agency for other brands, and some of the clients there are Mercedes-Benz, LMS, and Nestle as well. But they also look after the other side of the business. Also looks after hotels and health clubs in Manchester. So they're quite a busy and big company, to be honest.
I
But
see.
it's really amazing because they've actually come from humble beginnings. They actually just started in Manchester as a startup environment, and now they've grown into this, $5 billion, £5 billion business. At the time of them going public in September this year. So it's a really, really exciting story, and I'm really glad to be part of it.
And it started out as like an e-commerce business, right? And it's really like pivoted and changed focus
Yeah,
over that time.
that's it.
Yeah, super interesting. So what's a typical day like at work for you now, and what are you responsible for?
I hate to say it because it sounds so cliche, but it's so true that no 2 days are really the same. But despite it all, I do like to have constants and a routine, especially now that I'm working from home, and most people are as well. So that usually means that I'll check in at 9 a.m. with the senior marketing team. We'll do our kind of updates and announcements, and then I make my first coffee of the day, which is always a staple. And then after that, it's literally a balancing act, or I kind of just touch base with the social team, make sure that they're well supported, that they've got everything they need, and then I'm off responding to emails, doing a bit of social listening, and attending as much brand PR marketing meetings that I can. But yeah, it's quite a busy day for me because we actually oversee 9 brands. So that means that there's quite a lot of balancing that needs to be done to make sure that the senior team and the execs are switched on and they've got everything that they need. But I'm really fortunate that I've got a team that's just passionate about social and that really loves what they do. So it really allows me to kind of do most of what I really need to do, which is the forward planning, the pushing for innovation, and just making sure that we're improving our internal processes and that we've got the lines of communication really open between marketing and social and brand and all the other kind of key stakeholders in the company. So yeah, that's pretty much the bulk of my role, though, and bulk of my day.
I see. And you just started in September. So what was it like starting a new role in 2020? Very strange time.
It is. I mean, I feel like I've become quite used to this old new setup of working from home. But I mean, to be honest, it's still so mad to think that I haven't really technically met my team in real life. Because I've been working from home since March from my previous role, and then kind of moved over to Manchester, and I started straight away. So I feel like with this, it's something that you need to keep in mind is to always just check in with the team. I think that's something that I've really learned over this period, because prior to this I wasn't really much of a phone call person. To be honest, I much prefer to have conversations just in person with people. But now I've been more conscious about how this setup could be quite different for a lot of people. It might affect other kind of team members a bit differently from other people. Some might be very, very comfortable working from home, but some might, feel that they need to have constant contact or don't feel as supported. So I do really make an effort to make sure that I'm always checking in with my team, even if they don't say they need anything, if they're okay. I just, still kind of make sure that we stick to our weekly one-to-ones. And I make sure that I say good night or good evening or have a good weekend, just to make sure that they feel that, I'm there and that I'm present. So, yeah.
So do you have, I guess, different people? I'm just curious, like, who's on your team? These are the people managing like the social presence for the different brands, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So we've got so the team is kind of structured in that there is myself who kind of oversees everything as the head of social over those 9 brands. And then it's cascaded down into categories. So we've got a cosmetics category, a hair care category, and also a skincare category. Within those kind of teams, there is a senior and a junior exec that looks after the day-to-day running of all the social channels and all the platforms. And they make sure that everything kind of runs smoothly from a BAU perspective, but then they are also kind of forward thinking from a monthly to a quarterly basis to make sure that everything is just, in line with our trading objectives and our marketing objectives. And we bounce off ideas with each other and brainstorm if there's any kind of bigger pieces that we want to really showcase on social. If we want to, do a new IG live series, if we want to do a new YouTube tutorial series, how that looks like. And I just help make sure that we can facilitate that all.
Mm-hmm. I was curious, do you think there's any like right number of pages to have? Because that's a debate that I see come up a lot, and there's a lot of different opinions about it, I think, and ways you could potentially organize it. But yeah, well, I'll leave it at that. Any right number of pages to have and number of platforms to be on, and how do you, put the right amount of resources on each thing?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, it really boils down to knowing what your objective is on social and what you are wanting to say and what message you want to convey, because I think there's so many different platforms, but they serve very different purposes, right? So if you are able to really identify, what am I trying to say, and how am I trying to reach my consumer or my audience, then you're able to kind of plug which channel's right for you. I don't think it's a one size fits all solution when it comes to social, and I don't think that you should just jump on a new platform just because it's trending and because everyone's talking about it if you don't actually have a plan to grow it, or if you don't actually see the value of it from a long-term perspective, or if there's not enough resource. There's so many kind of contingencies and things that we need to consider. And it's so easy to just be like, yeah, let's just do a new Instagram page now, or let's just jump on TikTok. But there's so much thought and there's so much kind of strategy that comes down to it, and also resource, because you really need to be consistent, right, on social. So yeah, I don't think that really answered your question, but I feel like there is it just differs between different industries, different brands. Just kind of boils down to what you want to do and why you're doing it, really.
Yeah, there is no one right answer, I suppose. But speaking of platforms, I mean, I wanted to ask you what's your favorite platform personally, but also which is the most important for THG?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I actually really love Reddit, because there's a subreddit called Asian Beauty that I am actually obsessed with. I find all my tips, and I just love listening to people's opinions about what new kind of product they've found, or what new sort of thing that they want to try. I just think it's you can definitely spend a lot of time going through there, and it's just useful, lots of information. So yeah, that's personally for me. But I think for the company, we do kind of have a bit of a two-prong approach with it, where we still find the value of Facebook from a revenue perspective and from a reach perspective. I think also with what's happened now with the pandemic, there's that need to kind of be a bit more connected and find more connection in that way. So I think there's a lot of value in Facebook groups, and we're exploring that for the beauty segment, because we've already kind of launched that with My Protein, which is the fitness side of the business. But that is something that we want to try out as well for beauty, because there's so much of the beauty community that we haven't tapped into yet. There's so many people that we haven't spoken to. So I feel like that is an area of focus for the business. But then also there's Instagram. It's still a major thing for our business as well. It's the engagement driving force. And with that comes reels and stories, and also TikTok is kind of also starting to become a big force for us as well. But yeah, those are the two main sort of areas that THG are focusing on. But as a whole, we are really seeing kind of video content that spreads out to every single platform as a really key pillar for us this year and next year as well. We really want to strengthen our video offering. So yeah, that is something that is really important for us to focus on from both a short form perspective, but also long form content in the form of video.
What do you think some brands or companies get wrong when it comes to social media marketing in general?
I guess I think that companies have the tendency to like use social media marketing as an afterthought or a place to, you know, prove that they can be reactive without actually considering what they're saying, or whether it's true or authentic. And I think it was early this year that was really case in point of brands kind of speaking up potentially without having any afterthought or kind of jumping off the bandwagon and kind of thinking that they can be part of a social movement or have a social response, but not really realize, you know, is this aligned with what we've been saying from the start as a brand? You know, have we been kind of, talking about equality and that message pre whatever happens in June with the Black Lives Movement. And I think that was a really kind of eye-opening experience working in a brand, but also something that I realized that a lot of companies just don't get right sometimes because they are just so involved in the moment and really think that they need to say something because everyone else is saying something without actually thinking, you know, is this actually our brand ethos? Is this actually what we believe? And are we actually going to do something about it after we say it on social? I'm a really big believer that consistency is key, even though that, you know, social is ever changing. There's always something new. And that, you know, the media landscape or the marketing landscape is changing. I think even though that's the case, that a brand should still definitely stick to what they believe in and what they've been saying from the start. And I think it's so easy to be swayed in social because of all of that kind of quick changing things. But yeah, I think that companies should definitely still apply the whole think before you speak sort of mentality, especially in social. So yeah, I noticed that this year a few companies were very quick to kind of support equality and support the Black Lives Movement, and then soon after nothing was really said, or kind of there was no follow through, there was no afterthought, there was no sort of action plan afterwards, which was really disappointing. But it's just testament to how sometimes social can be used kind of haphazardly in a way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So could you share an example of a campaign or a piece of content that worked really well for you in the past?
Yeah, sure. So when I was actually at Marie Claire, Fiat, the car brand, they approached us about wanting to tap into a younger demographic of car owners who would kind of treat their cars as an extension of their own personality and lifestyle, essentially kind of like a fashion accessory in a way. So we created this digital first, socially led series, and we got a known Aussie influencer to be the host of this, and she would kind of drive around and talk to Australian creatives about what drives them, their passions. And it was such a simple idea when you kind of think about it in retrospect, but I just loved how Fiat were so on board, that they weren't kind of pushing too hard for their car to be featured, that they really kind of got what native content actually means. And I think as a result, we were able to really just capture these beautiful stories about some, you know, inspiring creatives that people knew in Australia, and get to know more about them. And it just was beautifully presented. It looked really well. It looked really good. Sorry. It was made for social. So the video was actually not just a TV commercial or not just an ad in a way. And it was just proof that storytelling, you know, has its place in social advertising, and nothing really beats a well-told story in a way. So yeah, that's one example.
Yeah, so you mentioned before too about creating a strong narrative. So do you have any tips on how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really crucial that you first, identify your brand pillars, or, the messages you stand for. It's not just what is your product related USP. It's looking into, the values of what your company stand for, whether it's heritage, whether it's good quality, whether it's, giving back to the community. And I think those are the values that you are able to share with your audience and be able to kind of really amplify on your channels, because it is authentic. And I think that's the thing that I kind of want to touch back on, is the whole authenticity piece and the whole consistency piece. I think a strong narrative really just boils down to being able to communicate that brand ethos, but actually believe in it, not just kind of be like, oh yeah, we're into cruelty-free products now because that's the new thing that's trending, but that it has always been something that's part of the company. For example, Illamasqua is very big on cruelty-free products, but also expression through artistry, because they're a makeup brand that's built from that sort of beginnings of real makeup artists and artistry in that way. And we really want to continue that story through social by not just showcasing makeup artists and their work, but actually kind of talking about the narratives that happen behind London Fashion Week, for example, and why and how makeup can be a form of expression. I think that's really cool, and that's something that is really integral in our social. So yeah, I think it really definitely boils down to being able to just be authentic and consistent with the brand messages and the brand pillars, really.
So in beauty and fashion and retail, I mean, there's tons of brands out there on social media, a lot of competition in a sense. So like, how do you stand out? Anything that you need to keep in mind in particular if you're running social in this area?
Yeah. I think it really helps to kind of be on the pulse of what other people are doing. I'm not saying that you should just kind of look for it and then copy it, but it's really good to be aware of what's happening around you. I think a lot of brands tend to be a bit insular, or when they get into the habit of things, just think, my way is the only way that's being done. And sometimes get a bit of a rude awakening when someone kind of joins the business, or when something happens and they're like, oh, I didn't know that you could do that on social, or I didn't know that this was what was trending. I think the good thing about social is that there is that human side of getting to analyze and hear what people have to say, or reviews and personal opinions. But there's also the data side of things, and social listening is such a good and valuable tool, because it really either informs your decisions or it confirms what you've been thinking about your audience. So I think that's a really good place to start, is to just identify kind of the things that your target demographic or target audience are involved in, their interests, their hobbies, what they're talking about on social, and then seeing how that makes sense for your brand in particular. And if that's a conversation that you can have because it is aligned to your brand ethos, then what sort of conversation should you have around it, and what does that look like? Is that a video content series? Is that a range of Instagram flat lays that actually represent things? That the sky's the limit in terms of what you can do on social, but as long as it actually stays and sticks with what you believe in as a brand, that will really stand out. And I think the one thing that I've always kind of asked my team to do, or not be afraid of, is to just test. I think that's the biggest and most important thing, because sometimes in the testing moments, in the testing phases, you strike a really cool balance, or strike a really great balance, or a great idea, and that can end up being the thing that makes you stand out, I guess, from the crowd. Or sometimes you can test something and it completely flops, but that's okay, because you've learned that it's not the right thing for you, or it's not the right thing for the brand, and it's a learning thing, and you move on. But yeah, it's really important that you do test, and that you're aware of your surroundings, and you're aware of what's happening, but also just to have a bit of fun with it. To be honest, I think people take it a bit too seriously sometimes with marketing, media, just everything sometimes takes too much of a I guess, a really serious lens. And sometimes, obviously things call to be serious, but then there's also some things that, some advertising campaigns or some things that a company just wants to do to just incite joy. And I think that's a great kind of attitude to have as well. As a person and as a brand, it's okay to kind of have fun, and it's okay to enjoy what you're doing, really.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So how do you stay up to date on social media and marketing trends, stay on the pulse?
I mean, I'm subscribed to a lot of newsletters to start off with. I think I subscribe to Social Media Today, Business of Fashion, Beauty of Business, The Drum, LinkedIn. Sky is the limit with all of this. I definitely love to just subscribe, because I get it quite frequently on a weekly basis, because sometimes you do get really busy and don't have time to kind of Google or even go to your favorite website. So I definitely recommend just subscribing to the newsletters that will give you kind of that daily dose or weekly dose of what you need. So yeah, that's how I kind of stay up to date. And then I'm always obviously on social. It's part of the job, and it's obviously you can't not be on social and work in social. It's just kind of part and parcel. But when I do look, I'm really aware of when things are organic posts, when things are advertising, and it's just really interesting to see the different formats and different layouts of what new brands are using, what sort of content they're using, whether it's video or still imagery. And also I get to see, the cadence of which influencers are starting to become more popular in beauty, who people are using more often. And social listening also helps with that as well. So that's kind of how I stay up to date with all the trends and what's happening.
And do you have any favorite marketing or business book?
It's a business book, because I'm not actually the biggest fan of business books, to be honest. I never really read too much of them apart from being at uni. But I actually found one, and it was the Shopify CEO's recommendation, really. He kind of recommended a few books, and one of them was Influence, The Power of Persuasion. And I heard about it, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll give it a go and listen to it. So I actually got the Audible ebook version of the book. And I actually, every night would just put on my like LED face mask, which is that new thing that everyone's using, and would just like listen to half a chapter or a chapter about it. And I just found it really thought-provoking, because I personally don't consider myself innately kind of persuasive, especially in business. Like, I hate to think that I'm the type of person that would manipulate to get my way or all that sort of stuff. So the book really touched more on the kind of psychology of why people say yes, and what really drives people. So I think that's really what became the interest in me. And I think I'd recommend that to people to read or listen to, because it's just a really thought-provoking book about influence in general, and especially influence in that business sort of setting.
Yeah, it sounds super relevant. And psychology is such a big part of everything we do in marketing, communication, social media.
Totally.
Yeah. So who's your professional role model or a source of inspiration?
I love Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I mean, I feel like I was quite late to the game, to be honest, in discovering her, but I'm so glad that I did, because she's just so worthy of being a role model on not just a professional kind of perspective, but also like a life model, really. And I actually heard about her for the first time on a podcast on a plane trip from Sydney back to London earlier this year. And I just fell in love with her, because she just the way that she spoke, the way that she kind of described her experiences. It was like so elegant, and so poised, but just so humble as well, considering all the achievements that she's had in her lifetime, and all the contributions she's made for America's legislation, and her kind of fight for equality and justice. I think that was amazing to hear. And then I obviously watched her documentary on Netflix and just fell in love with her even more. So yeah, that's definitely one of my kind of main professional role models. But I also do I also do think of the other women in the workplace that are especially in the exec kind of capacity, and I really admire them. Everyone from, Sue Nabi, who's the CEO of Coty, Konwa Oja, she was a marketing head at Mac, and I think moved over to Amazon, and also Rihanna, because I love her, but just also as a just as a boss in her own right of what she's done with her brand and her personal brand and made it into a business. I think like that's just been amazing to see. But yeah, those people are the type of people that really inspire me.
Very cool. Those are some great ones. Well, so for a less inspirational question, what's your favorite software tool or app right now?
Yes, I actually really like this new app called Agora. It's basically an app that you download and you can actually review beauty products and get rewarded for them every time you kind of review. And I think it's really great because it's just that it pretty much brings that old school word of mouth referral sort of method of marketing, but then just makes it much more engaging and much more relevant and modern. And I feel like it's a great space because you just learn so much and you get so much honest opinions come out of the app. But it's literally just fueled by UGC. Like it's literally just user generated content, and I think that's great. It's a good place for you to discover, but it's also a good place for brands to kind of look at because their products are being tested without kind of their input in it, which is really good. So it's quite objective in that way, and it's really honest. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that, and seeing, and I'm really curious to see what will happen with the app kind of moving forward, because I think it is quite in early days. I don't know whether it will kind of become more commercialized in a few years or whether advertising will come into it. But right now it's a really interesting place.
Sounds very cool. So do you recommend any other resources for marketers, whether that's an online community, publication, podcast, anything like that?
I would actually recommend definitely kind of looking into LinkedIn and the Dots, which are kind of career focused places and resources, because they host a lot of events, but they also kind of help with the whole networking side of things as well. Because when I was younger, I used to actually just reach out to people via LinkedIn to kind of sit down and have a coffee with them, or speak to them on the phone and just hear about their experiences, quite similarly to like what this is really. And I found it so interesting and so insightful, and it was just really great to be able to connect with people in industries that I wasn't necessarily a part of yet, but somewhere that I could see myself being. So I think, if I could recommend, it would definitely be to look at places like that and find either familiar or kind of relevant people that are in your industry, or people that you want to aspire to kind of become or be part of, one day. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we're reaching the end of the interview. So just wanted to give you a chance to share any parting advice or final takeaways for other marketers in Europe.
Yeah, I guess it's just to reiterate that to be consistent really and be authentic, and always have a two-way conversation between yourself as a brand, but also to your audience, and to just not just consider your audience as a customer, but as a part of the conversation. They're to me, I see the co-authors of what you're trying to say on whichever platform that may be, whether it's social, whether it's CRM, whether it's on the website. I think it's just to remember to stay true to what you believe in, and stay true to what the company stands for. And I feel like the rest will follow. And also, especially for European kind of marketers, or marketers based in Europe, I feel like there's so much rich behavior and cultures and and all that sort of side of things in Europe. And having that localized insight is so powerful, and I think really necessary for not just companies there, but global companies as well. I think it really benefits having that sort of localized insight and feedback in that regard. So yeah, I think to never forget that you make sense in the bigger puzzle, right? And yeah, that it could be global thinking, but we're all in it together wherever we are, really.
Yeah, that's a great note to end on. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today, Abigail.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks everybody for listening in. For more perspectives on content marketing in Europe, check out veracontent.com/mix and keep tuning in to the podcast for daily interviews with content experts. See you next time. Bye.